Call this meeting to order. Roll call. Council at large, Spear.
Here.
Council Ward number 1, Leeper.
Here.
Ward number 2, Anderson.
Here.
And Ward number 3, McNeil.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so now to the agenda additions and the agenda approval. Is there any changes?
Yes, we are going to remove item number 7 under new business, which is the resolution for amending the current budget. We didn't get the public hearing section on this agenda, so we are going to have a special meeting tomorrow to set the public hearing for May 20th.
All right. Any other changes? Then with that change, is there a motion to approve this agenda?
So moved.
McNeil with the first and Leeper with the second.
Anderson?
Here.
Spear?
Yes.
Leeper?
Yes.
McNeil?
Yes.
All right, so now on to the consent agenda, which can be enacted with one motion. They are the city council minutes from April 22nd, library minutes from March 27th, the library director's report from March 29th. Oh wait, sorry, I completely ran over communications. Having some technical difficulties with the interweb up here. So we will move on to the communications portion. I apologize for that. We do have one scheduled in this communication, and it's John Dornfeld. Is he here?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Mr. Dornfeld, if you wouldn't mind making your way to the podium over here.
Holy moly.
Yes, sorry about that, but Dornfeld?
So you want me to explain to you people the problem that I'm having? I've got, I think I counted these bills up, 8 or 10 or 12 bills that we get, which we pay monthly, with garbage collection when there isn't any, period. And I'm having a problem. Finally, what kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, the most recent bill that we got on the small unit that's not occupied at this point, there was $11 for the power we used, and the bill was over $100. So the, what do you call it, fringes are costing much. It's just, you know, what am I going to do? Do you sit back and just keep paying it and paying it and paying it? Or do we come to you people and say, if there's no garbage can, if there's no garbage collection, be like buying something not, or paying for something not getting it. And I want to know if there's something to be done about it. I know there's some old rules, maybe the rules got to be changed. And, because I still have another 10,000 square foot building to build. Do I build it here, or do I go somewhere where we have a little less rigid attitude about some of these fixed costs that are killing us? So basically that's my problem. So I guess I'm looking to you people to say, okay, obviously you can't do anything retroactive, but going ahead until we do have a garbage can. And I was told that we should know the garbage can number, serial number, should be available. If it is, I'd like to get that number, go see if I can find this phantom can. So what are we gonna do? Anything? Or are we just gonna ignore it? Expect people to keep paying. And to me, if you're going to promote a town, this is kind of a hard way to promote it. So that's kind of my case. It's that simple. So, has anybody got a, Brian, you got a thought?
Well, I guess
You and I talked some, but
yeah, I guess I want the council to get a better handle on your situation. You had a tenant in this one unit that you're talking about the most,
Right, which I paid all the utilities.
and then they moved out.
No, they didn't move out, they moved to another location within the building.
Okay, but that became a vacant unit.
It's vacant now, right.
Right, and it's been vacant for,
Oh, I guess 4, 5, 6 months.
so if somebody had come in right away, we wouldn't be talking about this. It's the,
Well, I guess if you were charging the new person a fee, but not furnishing the service, that person could be here instead of me. You know, see what I mean? That's my problem. And in a 20 by 20 office, the amount of garbage created is minimal, you know. One thing I don't quite understand, which I'll talk to the tenants, why don't we have the garbage cans around the back of the building instead of in front? Be a little less, a little more attractive not to have them out there. But the problem is that we're still paying a fee and not getting anything. So can we get that serial number of that phantom garbage can?
Yeah. We can see that.
Can you, could you get that for me? I'll ring you up in the morning and see if you can get it.
Yep.
And then we'll see if we can locate it.
Yep.
But do you people understand that? You get charged, I mean, is this just a flat tax? Then it should be so taxed. And then when you look at a $11 usage of power, and you got a $110 bill for storm drains and on and on and on. That's a little hard to handle too. And if we're gonna try to promote this town, what are we gonna do to entice people to come here? You know? And I think if someone were to see this before they were thinking of coming here, they wouldn't come here. So I think maybe it's time to take a good look at the whole picture. I don't know what. I don't have the answer. I'm not in Brian's position, you know. So, what can we do about it? Or are you gonna do nothing about it? If that's the case, I'll make darn sure I don't build that 10,000 square foot building in this town. I can go to a town that's a little more friendly, a little more warm and fuzzy, and they're around. So, and I've been here 12, 15 years and got to know a lot of people. So my question is, we can do something about it or what? So, I'm not hearing an answer.
well.
Or maybe you gotta sit down and engineer it, Brian, I don't know.
What?
No, as far as I know, everybody in town has to pay a flat garbage fee and a flat connection fee, even if they go on vacation, or if they go to, if they're snowbirds and they go to Florida and they make no trash, and during those times, they still have to pay that fee.
Okay. But the problem I'm having here is we don't have the service. You see what I mean? There's nobody, not only nobody there, but there's no garbage facility. Okay?
No,
And I hear what you say, because you still gotta maintain piping and power and on and on and on. I can understand that. But in this case, it's not been, you know, if I had garbage, where would I put it? You know? So I'll need that number.
Yeah.
You know?
Your issue's just the garbage?
The main thing, that,
And if this could have all been avoided if we would have dropped one of the cans off. Is that one?
not if it, you know, it would be a little less hard to swallow, yes. But when there's nothing there, there's nothing going on, that's a little tough to handle. So, and I'm not the only one that has that philosophy. But whether you're, you know, and you people have the right, because we don't have a choice. Because if we don't pay the bill, we get a lien on the structure. You know, that don't work. But I think we need to give a good hard look at this thing. And I understand there's some rule that if you've got another facility in town, then you as the council can say, well, we'll overlook this garbage fee if you're not using it. If that's the case, maybe it's time to take a look at that law that's probably 60 years old and revise it.
I think it was just revised this past calendar year.
How was it revised?
We didn't used to give them a relief if they.
No, everybody still had to pay the $9 per address.
Or at least 5.
Yeah.
Well, that, now, is the $5 you're talking about the storm drain?
No,
No, just garbage.
yeah, it's $9.13.
If you, the idea, if I understand it right, what was called an exemption before was really a $5 charge. And then the council decided to make the exemption complete, so they dropped the $5 charge for situations where somebody has, say, 2 properties. One is generating garbage or has a garbage bill, the other one doesn't. So that, the one that didn't used to be charged $5 a month.
Yeah,
The council dropped that down to 0.
0, provided you had another facility in town.
Right, and then the person would, in order to get that, the person who knew they fit that situation applies to the council. And we've had several of them since last year when this was done.
Yeah. I can understand that, and I'll go, but $5 beats the hell out of 22.5, doesn't it? That's what the fee is.
But the one thing that I was thinking of at the meeting was, when the council exempted or took away that $5 charge, they did it for everybody it applied to. If
Regardless of whether or not they had another facility in town, but you did not.
we didn't, it wasn't set up for anybody in particular, it was set up for everybody that had that situation. So if we did the same thing in your case, if a landlord had a vacancy, they would be asking for an exemption while they're between rentals.
That's not why I'm asking for it.
But that's what is gonna happen.
There should be some mechanics to circumvent that, I would think. But I'm just having a big problem paying $22.5 a month when we got all these other incidental charges the way it is, and not having any service. Now, you guys have the right to say, go jump on the lake, fine. But, maybe somebody's got a bright idea. And I understand you got,
How many buildings you got?
well, there's one building there's over 10,000 square feet. And there's, right now, I think there's 5 tenants. And, they all pay their own utilities. And they all create garbage, or whatever, you know?
But I mean, you might be asking, do you have other locations other than that building?
At this point, no. I usually do, but at this point, no. So, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, I'm having a problem understanding what bearing that has on that particular location. And if that's a rule that's been around
Won't
for,
the exemption work for this building if he's got like 5 rentals in it, only one portion of it, you know? It's 5 separate.
Basically, your main concern is not having the garbage can for that facility, right?
and, yeah, and for all these months, it's not, you know, there's been many months where there was no tenant in that particular one, but the bills kept coming and Bonnie keeps paying them, and I'm gonna stop that. Yeah.
But it's not the issue that the building is empty and you're having to pay the service.
No,
That's not your issue.
that's not, you know, the fact that it's empty is not your problem, it's my
Right,
problem.
right, okay.
Yeah. So,
So we need a garbage can out there.
well, yeah, but still, once again, yeah, if, you know, then I have a little less to complain about.
Right,
But
right.
right now, I got this whole list of bills that shows how many we've had. And when there's no service, that's a little, you know, and if I can go put 9 locks in every month or every week, or whatever it is, so there is hypothetically something hauled away. We worked on that brick house there for 2 years, and I paid it all the time, and I don't know why. But I don't know if I had any other facilities per se. I had some bare ground, but that don't count, I don't think.
Yeah, I think so.
It's gotta be something that's using the material. So I kinda leave it in your ballpark, but it just doesn't sit with me that we should keep paying some.
And hopefully Lisa will get you a number tomorrow and they'll get a can out there.
We'll find out.
Yeah, it should be there, we'll verify that.
What was I called?
Lisa?
Or Lisa will.
But if we, you know, if we can find, does it exist? And if it does, where is it? But, to keep paying for something, the fact that they're maybe not using this particular time is not a problem for you people. You know? But, when there's been no service, but the bill keeps merrily coming on, that just, that would set with me real good. I don't think anybody else sitting here would go along with it either.
No, I agree.
So, I'll ring you in the morning, give you guys your thoughts, and see if you come up with a mousetrap that might work. And I understand, you've got 5,000 other people to contend with. I don't want your job, no. You're never right, Brian, I don't care what it is. But, I think it should be other than ignored. And I do have a problem. You got $11 worth of power, and you got a $110 bill. And you know, there's not only garbage cans, but all these other charges, which I know you gotta maintain things. But I guess I've invested a lot of money to build this thing, and it's proved beneficial to me, but it's proved beneficial to every one of you people here representing the city in taxes. And that's what we're all trying to do is fill this thing up. I'm not too sure how we're gonna do it, but how do you attract them? Just don't show a potential, just, if they take off from wild blue yonder. So that's my case. I leave it up to her. I'll ring Brian and see if you guys got any bright ideas. Is that a fair deal?
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Dornhoff.
Easy on that, mister, you make me very nervous.
Forward your bright
Thank you.
ideas. Forward your bright ideas to me.
Alright, so that was the sole scheduled communication for the council. Then we move on to the unscheduled. If there's anybody else who would like to speak to the council, you can make your way to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Larry Hodgson, 210 East 6th Street, Tipton. 4 years ago, I addressed the city council about the condition of the streets and the sewers. And at that time, the residents of Tipton were also concerned enough about it that we started a petition and we collected over 700 signatures that requested that the city of Tipton do something about the streets and the sewers instead of spending more money to rebuild a new airport. Tonight, that airport is back on the agenda again. We're looking to spend more money pursuing a new airport, which, if everything went like clockwork, wouldn't happen until 2031. And I know some of the landowners, and they're no more interested in selling today than they were 4 years ago. So we're chasing Tilton windmills here, and I think you should drop that idea and focus on sewers and streets like we should have been doing for some time. They're certainly not getting any better. We've got people here tonight who are having sewer issues. Everybody in town is complaining about the condition of the streets. You don't have to drive very far to see that they're not improving. We are doing some things, appreciate what you are doing, but we got so far behind because we were doing other things, looking at other things. We should have been concentrating on streets and sewers, and that's what I told the council 4 years ago. 3 of you are sitting at these tables tonight because we brought the issue up 4 years ago, and the people of Tipton agreed that you need to be concentrating on streets and sewers and not building a new airport. So, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Larry. If there's anybody else who would like to address the city council?
All I can say is the road wasn't built in a day.
Is this, sorry, is this for, because we're scheduled under new business, is that coming in later?
Yes, that will be down,
All right,
yeah. I think, hold on. Yes, sorry, yes,
that's fine.
all right. If there is nobody else who would like to address the council, we'll close that portion of the meeting, and now we'll move on to the consent agenda, which they can be enacted with one motion. They are the city council minutes from April 22nd, library minutes from March 27th, library director's report from March 2019, liquor license renewal at Casey's, liquor license renewal at the VFW, and the claims list. Do any of these need to be pulled out? Is there a motion? Anderson with the first, and Spear with the second.
Spear,
Yes.
Leeper,
Yes.
McNeil, Anderson,
Yes.
All right, so now to old business, the first one, which is the ordinance amending chapter 106, collection of solid waste, the schedule of fees. This will be the second reading. Brian?
Yes, this is an ordinance that Melissa helped put together based on the financial analysis she did of expenses that we've been seeing. And the amount of increase was something that you discussed at the last meeting. And it has that still. It went through the first reading, so unless there are any new ideas or second thoughts, it's up for a second reading now.
All right. Do you guys have any questions? Well, I'll ask for a motion to pass this second reading. Lieber with the first,
Okay.
and Spear with the second.
Leeper,
Yes.
McNeil,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Spear,
Yes.
All right, so now down to new business, which this is, the residents from that area may be present. So this is discussion of possible action concerning the approval of an overflow sanitary sewer line at 13th Street. Steve, you want to start off, or?
I can, or if the residents would like to speak first.
Maybe if you could introduce what's happened and what you're doing. And
Absolutely. Good to see some concerned residents here.
Yes.
I knew that would be the case. In all seriousness, this is a huge issue on the north end of town, and you've all got my memo and write up on it, and some of the reasons for how this has developed over time. This just didn't happen last week with that backup in Cedar Street. This has been going on for decades, for several reasons. Last week, we did experience some kind of a failure in that system between, the sewer main between 10th and 11th that caused a partial blockage. And after a 3-inch rain, we had manholes backing up into a few basements, and that's, to say the least, it's disgusting. And worse than that, it's a health issue. And we're certainly aware of that, and we were a little bit perplexed as to why that was happening. Finally, there was so much flow in the system that our equipment couldn't clear the line. We finally got action out of Iowa City to come over and go up the line with that much flow, and they were able to dislodge a chunk of that looked like concrete or something that had gotten in there, maybe from a manhole that had come apart, some malfunction there. But it was a blockage, partial blockage. As soon as that came out, the manholes went down and the basements were drained within probably the hour. So we were just glad that we found something, because we just could not figure out why we're getting that kind of a backup. Now, there's the reasons that happens so quick up there in that area is because a lot of the basement floor drains and sanitary drains coming out of the homes are just a little bit above the main. So as soon as that main gets backed up and goes over their lines, it goes back into the basements. When you get below 11th or below 10th Street, that's not the case. 10th Street on Cedar, from there on down, those sewer lines come into that main several feet above the main. So getting sewerage back up in that part of town is nearly impossible. Having said all that, a year ago, well, not a year ago, last September, Brian and Brennan and I were looking at possible ways to circumvent that problem and redirect that sewage from the north end to a less utilized main. We have that west trunk line that we put in 2006, that goes along the west side of town all the way up to Walmart. That's a very underutilized main, and it's only about a block and a half away from where this problem is. So we suggested then that we need to investigate what it would take if we've got enough elevation and pipe size and all that to eliminate that problem and take that sewage to the west trunk line. Jack Pope, our engineer, agreed. He's done some preliminary studies on it. I talked to him again today. He says there's no doubt in my mind that that's going to be a fix, that will almost completely eliminate that ever being a problem again. We don't have the drawings on it yet. Typically, when we do something like this, the process takes about 10 or 12 months because it goes through design, it goes through DNR permitting, it goes through contracting it out, letting a contract, and getting it scheduled. I think this is, and I told the residents when we met with them last Thursday, I told the residents up there that this is important enough, I think, that we can do this in-house in a couple of months as soon as we can get, if we can get council okay on it, and if we can get it designed and DNR permitted. And we've explained it to the residents how that could work. I'm anxious to see the design. We've looked at a couple different designs, but I'm really comfortable with Jack doing this. He did one of these for us down in the park about in 2013. I think that was put in, and that took that pressure off that manhole at the park entrance. There was another one designed to go in down by the elementary school, but that didn't play out because we did that big pipe replacement down on Lemon Street, so we didn't need to do that one down on Lemon. That got taken care of. This is the most critical piece of our system that we have in place right now. Now, we have other problems in town. There's no doubt about that. With sewers, we all know we've got sewer problems, we've got street problems. And I'm here to tell everybody that Public Works is utilizing all the money and all the personnel and equipment we can to eliminate and take the pressure off all those situations. We use all the road use tax money, we use the sewer money that we've been collecting, these extra charges, so to speak. There's a lot of money and time and effort going into this. Having said that, this is still the biggest piece of the equation right here that we need to deal with, in my mind.
I seen somebody ask, where is this at? Care if I draw it quick?
Brian,
Yes, I would like to see, please draw it, Brian.
So north end of town, this is Cedar Street coming down. 13th Street is here. This is Fetterman's house. Everybody, I think, pretty much knows where that's at. And then the S-curves come up here. Candace Scott lives over here. And so the trunk line flows down out of the Fraser addition. Adding all the Fraser addition probably added to the complications a little bit. Added flow over the years, more additions, you know how it works. So this is kind of backing up in here, not only because of the blockage, because it's too small too. And so we got this trunk line, it turns at the motor bank, goes down to Plum Street, turns south, and then goes down 5th. But anyway, so out here on the west side of town, between Bowie and Manats, we also have this trunk line that goes all the way to the wastewater plant. It's underutilized. This is only 550 feet from here to here. So it's not a huge investment to connect the two and basically have an interceptor or a bypass. So we're talking about a minimal design and in-house project with our staff for most of it, if not all of it. And probably less than 30,000.
Oh, Brian,
So if that helps.
put my house in there too.
Yeah, and I gotta ask your name again, there are,
Leichner.
Light
They're on
Shore,
the other
yeah,
side
so
of
they're over
campus.
here on
That's North
North
Avenue.
Avenue, so they're having a little trouble over here too, at North and
Yeah,
and 12th
definitely.
Street.
Their house is bigger than that.
13.
So,
That was helpful. Thank you.
not ours.
That's the simplest solution, do it.
Thank you, Ross. It's so simple that I'm surprised that we didn't see that 20 years ago. Some things that have added to that issue in that area is that we have a lot of I&I up in that area. A lot of inflow, a lot of infiltration, a lot of inflow comes from roof drains, we think, and other things that's complicated that. But
Doesn't that, aren't there out there in that field, there's a manhole or two?
There is.
Over- Is that where
Over in this
Walmart
area.
comes in?
Walmart comes through all that,
Sure. And why not?
and it picks up the trailer court.
To hook that up, that's the simplest solution, best way to do it.
If
that
there's-
eventually turns, that trunk line eventually turns into a 15-inch pipe. So it's really underutilized. And what we're proposing is an 8-inch bypass or interceptor. That is actually the size of the pipe that's coming past Latta Terrace.
Mhm.
So,
And it won't go underneath Cedar Street, it'll just stay on the west side of it.
right now, the preliminary design looks like we'll just stay on, we'll grab it on the west side of 38 so that we don't get that DOT.
Mhm.
There will be some DOT involvement, because I think we'll be in there right away with that new manhole.
Okay.
So that's another little piece of it,
It's
but
always- This is
it looks like we can bring that all together.
Okay.
Oh, and then that's the road there, right? So, yeah, there's
Brian's really good at drawing these things. He drives this stuff for me all the time.
He 101 drawing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
To see
real
the
nice.
maps in our cabinet, yeah.
The only thing I maybe would add is that this, as a sewer project, we're looking at multiple sewer projects right now.
Mhm.
You know, some of them are in concept, some are in design, some of them we're getting ready to bring proposals to you. This could change that order of business just a little bit. This one's high priority. This one's got basements backing up the
Yeah,
sewage.
that's not.
Some of the others don't. They're causing too much flow, but
But by doing that, you're gonna eliminate some of the other problems.
Possibly, yeah.
possibly, yeah.
Yeah, any of them that are connected.
Sometimes the engineer will tell you you're gonna relocate the problem somewhere else. We gotta watch out for that
Right,
too,
well.
but
But the thing I'm saying is, that's the most economical way to go to solve the problem we have right now.
And Steve, you're saying the tightest of timelines is like 3 to 4 months?
Well, when I talked to Jack last week, he thought it'd be 4 to 8 weeks before he could get, he's gotta get a crew back up here to do a one-call design.
You said 4 to 8 weeks?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not 48, I'm sorry.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I'll slow down a little bit. It's 4 to 8 weeks, but they need to get a crew up here to do a one-call that actually locates the depth of, there's a storm sewer in there. We've got electric lines and poles in there too. We need to be able to put this in probably behind the street and around existing infrastructure.
Okay.
So that design takes a little bit of time. The DNR permitting takes a little bit of time, and we'll, in all likelihood, I haven't seen the final design, but we'll be in touch with DOT as well. So those are the little steps we have to take to get there, but our crew is anxious to do this. I've got 4 guys, 5 guys that like these kinds of things, and we might need some help on some things that might be a little too deep on one manhole. I'm not sure yet. We've got to see the design.
My only question is, do you have a trench box yet?
We will have a trench box.
Your answer is no, but we will.
Okay,
We
we
will,
got one.
we will before we start digging trenches.
Thank you very much.
But in the meantime, they shouldn't experience the problem because the lodged piece.
Let me just throw this out. We have
Still will.
We have a stopgap measure here.
It's
And
bad.
this,
Yeah, they didn't have a blockage last year, and it came in, the sewer came right up into our basement about Yeah, you did.
On
And we
that-
had to have all that cleaned out and disinfected and.
Yeah, that would be
We
horrible.
do have a finished basement. And that was after, what, like, at that time, I think we had 3 inches one week and 4 inches the next week of rain.
Yeah, there was a lot.
And it came out.
We don't think the blockage we found is a cure-all, we're not confident that.
It won't get them through
We
4 to
might
8
get
weeks.
another opportunity to
But
see on Wednesday.
They have another thing that they've worked on that could apply to the period during those 8 weeks. You wanna?
Yeah, I want to bring this up, and our stopgap measure basically is that we do have a 4-inch pump now with enough line to bypass, to go into the manhole at Fetterman's, to bypass all the way down to the west trunk line. So that we can, if we get a phone call and someone says, hey, it's coming up in our basement that we don't know about, because that could happen, they're to call us, and we've got that pump sitting there with the line ready to go up and pump that over to the west trunk line before it gets in the
We've got
basement.
500 foot of hose we can set on top of the ground and put it
Put
down.
it in.
So we are prepared to intercept that stuff. I wish we would have known a little bit more about all this, 6 or 8 months ago. But we had, I know that one time last fall that when we had all that water, we had a lot of saturated ground. The water table was really high in that end of town. We had a couple of those big rains. All of our pipes were full. Not only our storm pipes, but our sanitary pipes. There was no place for the water to go. That would have been real tough. Then, it could have been done. This bypass probably would work in a deal like that, but that was a tough situation back then.
Is there anything else from the residents as
Well, I
well?
was just gonna say that, storm drain in front of my house around the corner of 13th and North Avenue. We get that rain, that darn thing sounds like a jet engine going off. I mean, just water.
So much more coming in
It
this
actually
direction,
backed
that
up.
direction.
On that corner, backed up about 4 foot up into my yard, yet, before it went down, I mean, got some time to go down. But,
Yeah, we have, fortunately, we do have a valve that we can turn off to keep the sewer from coming back, but then we can't use anything in the house. You can't shower, you can't wash clothes, can't flush,
Walmart,
So-
Family Foods is no point.
and there's nothing open 24/7 that we can go to, so we're just stuck, and it's very unsanitary.
It is.
And Candace back here she doesn't have a valve.
Yeah, I
And
don't,
she got a ton of stuff in her basement, and so did the Bettman.
Mr. Fetterman?
Well, I didn't get sewer back up. I have another issue, but you need to understand that that's probably what they've designed is the best thing to take the pressure off from our house south. Which means these people would be hooked up to that other line going out. We would not. But these sewer lines were put in the 30s. And I think the biggest problem we've had lately is a lot of those manholes or pieces of brick and chunks have fallen out because of the truck traffic. After the flood of 2008, they found this miraculous little path that went right through Tipton. And so when the flood was over, they still kept coming through Tipton. And so the truck traffic is a problem that's going to have to be addressed in regards to fixing up the sewer line. I mean, as far as the manholes, because I will get about every other year, it seems like we get a chunk of something down there, and my thing is not draining. So I call the city office and say, hey, I can't use my stool. I got it shut down, the sewer's backing up. Now, this would eliminate the problem we had this last time, because all that water coming this way, wouldn't keep backing up.
Right.
However, it would have backed up into my, sewer simply because there was a clog there. And that comes from the sewers are just old. I mean, I'm not quite as old as the sewers. My building doesn't work as well as it did. But, I don't have truck traffic running over me all the time. And you do, and I think, I don't know if the state ever makes a study, of truck traffic, you know?
I don't really
Because
know
it'd be,
either.
I had another issue that's unrelated to the sewer, but the state put a patch of concrete across, just right in by my residence. Well, that was great, except the ends on both sides of that concrete broke down. So when the trucks hit that, it goes up, boom, it's just like like I've had stuff fall off shelves just because it's shaking. And it's the truck traffic and that concrete thing. But that's why I noticed that there's just a whole lot of truck traffic that, I think it's gotta be addressed some way.
Well, thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to say how much I appreciated that we were able to get together with you guys to work on this. We do appreciate the attention that you're paying to it. Like they said, the Fettermans have a shut-off valve, as do the Leichners. I do not. I don't have a finished basement, but I don't have that shut-off valve. It's very expensive to put one of those shut-off valves in. So the first year I purchased the house back in 2013, we got a bunch of water and we had about 6 inches of raw sewage throughout the entirety of our basement. And it's a ranch style house, so that's a lot of basement and it's a lot of sewage. I was the one down there. I cleaned it all up. It's just, and we thought it was kind of a freak occurrence, so we didn't really think about it at that point in time. I mean, yeah, it literally kind of shitty, but, it was, we just kind of chalked it up to a freak occurrence. But it is taking less and less rain to instigate this. I have 2 big drains in my basement, and I get about a 6-inch geyser coming out of them when this starts to happen. The first year it happened, I had a pet skunk, and he lived down the basement, and we didn't know it was happening, and thank God he had a plastic kennel that he was in because he was floating by. He would have drowned if he didn't have the plastic kennel. But it is, it's really frustrating, and I've told you guys that I am happy to pay the extra charges. I know things get more expensive as we go down. There's been a ton of natural disasters, so the cost of construction expenses and the cost of the labor, it continually goes up. And I get that, and I understand that, the cost of living goes up. Our problem just has been that we're not seeing the maintenance to go with it. So, but this seems like a really viable, really viable solution to this, and a very viable stopgap measure in the meantime. But we would appreciate your consideration because this does affect our health. We all have different health issues, and even if you clean it, even if you have it professionally cleaned, like the Leichners, they had
Servpro.
Yeah, they had Servpro come in, and when the who'd you buy it from? The Sycamores. When the Sycamores lived there, it got flooded repeatedly, and I would watch them, because it was finished, and they pull out all this carpet and all of this stuff. But they had it professionally cleaned. And when the Leichners just recently, they put in a new shower down there, and they put up that old shower, and there's all this black stuff in there. So even though they're getting it professionally cleaned, it's still there, and it's causing mold, and it gets in your central heating system, and just things you don't really have to think about. So, but I do appreciate the time that they've taken to work on this, and I appreciate the time that you're taking to consider this evening.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry for your time with that. So if there are no other questions, I'll ask for a motion for this. Anderson with the first, and Leeper with the second.
McNeil. Anderson.
Yes.
Spear.
Yes.
Leeper.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank you.
and thank you.
Yep, and thank you for coming here too.
And thank you, Brandon, for the.
All right, so next one, discussion of possible action concerning McClure Engineering update to the airport environmental assessments and assist with land acquisition efforts. Airport committee or Jay, or all three of them.
Good evening, my name is Jay Krenz. I'm with McClure, help the airport with their engineering and planning needs. This comes in front of you after a few years of kind of pushing pause on the airport expansion project. The airport approached us to find out what would be needed to restart the process, and the first step would be an update to the environmental assessment. If you remember, back 2012 timeframe, after the master plan was developed for the airport expansion, an environmental assessment report was needed to evaluate all the different environmental consequences of a project of this magnitude. So those last approximately 3 years before they would need to get updated, and an update is basically sending out, is reevaluating the purpose and need of the project, reevaluating the alternatives, and then putting together a letter that you send out to the agency, similar to what it was the first time, making sure there aren't any new environmental impacts that weren't, or that maybe had come since the time the last one was done. So it's a template that we work with the FAA, and it's a lot shorter process, but still required to go through as part of restarting the land process. So the first part of what's in front of you is to do that. And then the next part is the city would then, if that gets approved, which we will know here over the next probably few months, then we would need to basically look at the plats that were done previously, and the airport then would need to decide which land they would want to look at first, and then those plats would be looked at again to make sure that the boundaries are still the same than they were before, and the city would then engage likely the city attorney to help with the land process, I guess. Trying to think if I missed anything important here. You guys have anything to add?
You did it pretty well.
The goal, I guess, for the airport would be this time next year, they'd be in a position where hopefully they've found landowners that they can work with, and an FAA grant application would then be submitted by sometime next May in order to be considered for a fiscal year. This would be a fiscal year 2020, which would be the next fiscal year grant.
The appraisals have to be redone as well.
Yes, so there's the next piece of it is update the plats, update the appraisals, set new market value for the land, and then we would work with the FAA to make sure that that is what's considered fair market value, and then they would go out to the landowners to work with them. Good point.
I'd like to make a comment, Jay, that once again, and it's been said many times, this is not to build a new airport. And it's been said for years. It's about trying to save up and have money and a plan to build a runway, because we know this one won't last forever. And we want to do that so that it's a safer airport runway, and we want to do it with 90% financing.
Along with that, Pam.
Federal financing,
Yeah,
just
exactly,
it would be our 10%.
The present runway is not, what's the word? The FAA does not approve where it is at this point.
Right.
They request that if they're going to fund it, it has to be relocated, and it's not an expansion. The runway is going to be virtually the same length. It's going to be 400 foot longer. But it has to be moved away from the road, away from the Cedar Valley Road, away from the trees at the golf course, away from the fuel farm. That's their requirements.
Right.
It's nothing that we have requested just to make it
Just
look
because.
nicer. Yeah, there are reasons that it has to be relocated.
That's a great point. Yeah, it currently does not meet the FAA safety requirements for runway safety area, runway protection zone, runway object-free area. So they did fund a pavement rehabilitation project a couple years ago, and that's going to get, some more years out of that runway, but we're not talking 10 years probably, we're talking less than 5, I would say, so.
And I have a couple questions. The first one, there's gonna have to be, new money for environmental and appraisal and all that. And it's my understanding that it's being looked at as a loan from the city to the airport to be repaid back.
With the income that's earned from the rents,
Yes.
we will receive.
As soon as we have land acquired, then it starts reproducing income. And it all goes back against the program.
And you guys have found possible landowners that possibly want to sell this time, right?
Correct.
Yes.
I have personally talked to 2 different of the landowners, and they both assured me at that time that they are willing to sell the portion we're asking for from each one.
Right.
And that's where we're gonna start.
Sounds good. Is anybody else? Leanne, do you have anything?
No, that all sounded good.
All right.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions for those guys? All right. Then I will ask for a motion concerning the engineering contract with McClure.
So moved.
Spear with the first, and McNeil with the second.
Anderson?
Yes.
Spear?
Yes.
Leeper?
Yes.
McNeil?
All right. So I'll move on to number 3, which is a resolution approving the change order number 3, change order number 4, pay estimate number 7, pay estimate number 8, and the completion of the Lemon Street construction project.
I think you covered it all. Yeah, so finally, we were able to get BWC back out to complete the remaining punch list items from late last fall on Lemon Street project. There was some seeding they had to do in addition to taking down erosion control. So these change orders cover basically adjustments to the unit price items that were made this spring after everything got wrapped up last fall, and then part of the liquidated damages settlement that the city reached with BWC in the fall. So I think net over net, it's actually a little bit of a deduct for the city with those 2 change orders incorporated on the total contract cost.
No.
And then on the pay estimates, so basically it's a revised sub-final pay estimate to balance out all the unit prices, which is a pretty small pay estimate, I think about $5,000. And then the second pay estimate is the final pay estimate to release retainage to BWC. Then lastly, we've just got the completion paperwork that they have signed that we need you guys to accept the project as well. The only other thing I'd mention is that I noticed when I drove by the project earlier today, some of the grass hasn't taken, but the weather hasn't been all that warm. So we'll just play that one by ear. It's covered in the contractor's warranty. If we need to get them to come back out and reseed again, in spots where the grass doesn't take.
All right. Is there any questions for Alex?
No, thank you. All looks great.
Yeah.
All right, great.
So is there a motion? Leeper with the first and Anderson with the second.
Spear?
Yes.
Leeper?
Yes.
McNeil?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
All right, number 4, discussion and possible action concerning amendment number 2 to the agreement for the wastewater treatment plant.
Yep, so we had a design review meeting back, I want to say at the end of January, with staff, to kind of update them on the progress of where we were plans. We were between 30 and 60% complete at that time. We've made a little progress since then. But at that meeting, we discussed potential changes to the electrical and SCADA controls descriptions for the plant, or for the proposed project. And after some discussion, debate, we've recommended that the city go forward with consolidating all of the control equipment in the new control room that we're proposing at the West Wastewater Plant. So that takes all the electrical equipment, all the computer screen, the graphical user interface, all that SCADA equipment, puts it from the existing blower building, or the existing blower control building, into the new proposed building. There'll be additional equipment tied into that as a result of the upgrade project. In addition to that, there's improvements at the east wastewater plant with monitoring controls equipment where signals will be transmitted from the east plant to the west plant. So operators will be able to kind of remotely monitor and control the processes at the east plant without having to physically drive out there and check on it, because it is a little bit of a jaunt, given that the plants are so far apart, and you want to have all your operations in one centralized spot. The other thing I'd point out is that the controls that are currently in the west plant are aging. They've been in there for almost 20 years. There's a computer screen that Ryan had a heck of a time replacing. It was probably 6 months ago.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
But the technology is, I mean, it's like turn of the century technology, as you can imagine. A lot of the controls equipment has advanced rapidly here in the last few years as technology's improved. So basically this project is to consolidate all that equipment, make it brand new, and put it in the new building to give the operators the best flexibility to basically control every process in the plant from a single spot.
Right.
I don't want anybody to have the impression that this is fancy bells and whistles. I think it's pretty basic stuff, but admittedly, when we did the 30% review and we talked about some of the needs, I guess I didn't quite expect to see the change order come, and I guess I should have known that. So it was a little bit of a surprise to me, but in talking about the control system, it's a DOS system. We've heard of DOS. And we had to go all the way to Canada to find a replacement screen for that, so we were fortunate enough to find that. So this does away with the DOS system and gets us on something newer. Alex, my question for you would be if there's anything you would exclude out of this amendment that maybe isn't necessary, we wouldn't need, what would jump out at you?
Well, I mean, it's a tough question. Some of the replacement work, but in the existing building, but at the same time, that's the stuff that's the oldest. That's probably the easiest to exclude. And that was kind of how we wrote our original agreement, because you have parallel control equipment. And the purpose of this is to consolidate everything into a single computer screen, a single method of control.
The 4 lift pumps that are probably the most important thing down there have 15,000 hours on them. That's the equivalent of 1 million miles on your vehicle. Seems like when we do this upgrade, it makes sense to get them 4 swapped out. They're 50 grand a piece.
Yeah,
Well, that's,
so we've included that. We'll design all of that work, and then we're planning to take bids on that as an alternate, based on where the project budget comes in, and we can make that determination. But worst case is you'll have the documents ready to go, that if you want to do it in the future, you can do that as well, and be able to easily integrate those new controls into the new control system.
the blowers have 27,000 hours. Well, that's the equivalent of 2 million miles on it. So that also is included in this replacement blowers for those.
The blowers will be replaced in the control system as well, so that you won't just have new blowers with electrical lines that are also 20 years old in a corrosive environment. You'll have all new stuff.
Does anybody have any questions for Alex or Brian? Is there a motion to approve this amendment?
So tell me exactly.
No, question only.
Okay, no. Am I bidding on the 300,000 to 500,000?
That's our budgetary cost estimate for how much we think all these improvements are gonna take. I think $500,000 construction cost is a good number.
So we're making a motion just to approve you to move forward?
This is our engineering work in order to prepare the bidding documents for that work.
Okay.
That will end up in between the 300 to 500.
The 300 to 500.
Hopefully.
That's gonna come later.
There's a big range for these items. This is pretty complex work in terms of coordinating all the control descriptions. And we've seen a lot of volatility in the marketplace the last couple of years on SCADA equipment in terms of where it comes in at bid day. That's our best estimate at this point.
Is there a motion to approve this? McNeil with first, and Leeper with second.
Leeper.
Yes.
McNeil.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Spear.
Yes.
So you'll get us up to Windows 97?
Whoa.
Maybe Windows Millennium if you're lucky.
All right, Windows 98, nice.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Alex. All right, to number 5, which is discussion of possible action concerning IIW's proposed agreement for engineering related to the Highway 38 build grant. Yes, it's because he's not one.
An engineer?
We're heavy with engineers because he isn't one.
Thought he's supposed to know.
Yeah. Oh no, come on up. Yeah, sorry. Inside.
Good evening.
Good evening.
John Lutz with IAW. Been working with Brian and Steve and the group here. Melissa, we've been meeting with ECIA and working with Chandra there on preparation and planning for a build grant application. IAW helped do the same thing with the Kokota project a year ago. We provided support information for a successful project bid that they had on that. So Ryan, in his wisdom, decided that let's throw the dice in on this one here. It's a similar situation to Makokata, and there's quite a bit of planning that goes in with it. It involves cost estimates, renderings, and concept designs of some things that don't exist yet that you may propose that we would spend money on if the build grant would be successful. Things like a trail through town, some fiber extensions, and things that score well on the build grant application that you could also use in town. And that's what happened with Makokata. You looked at how the scoring would go and then prepare your plan around that. We get DOT involved as well and buy-in on that. Typically when you start to talk to DOT then you bring them to the table and pretty soon you end up they're contributing more money to the game. That's what happened in Makokata. Instead of just getting an overlay, they were getting a street reconstruction torn up and replaced with concrete, so we wouldn't have the pounding that he talked about, patches and things like that. So we submitted a proposal. Chandra from ECIA outlined items he wanted us to provide support for, so we estimated the time to take to prepare that, and so that's what we included in our proposal.
All right. Somebody have any questions for John? All right. Is there a motion to approve this agreement? Lieberwitz first, and McNeil with second.
McNeil, Anderson.
Yes.
Spear.
Yes.
Leeper.
Yes.
All right, so that one is approved, and now we'll move to number 6, which is a proposed agreement for preliminary engineering for that same Highway 38 project.
So, yes, with the same project, this would include the preliminary design, and the project would start. And basically, DOT came to the city, and I'm probably regurgitating stuff to you that you've known for years, but I'll just repeat it again. DOT came to the city and said, hey, it's time to fix Highway 38 through town, and Brian's been working with DOT, and we started the process with concept and cost estimate initially, and with the tag of about around $5 million total, 2.5, 2.3, something like that for city and DOT share. Then the next step is moving forward to do more of the design. To start in with topographic survey, working with Steve on getting some of the sewers videoed. We want to know exactly what the sewers look like and sewer services, so we can get things repaired under the street before we put a brand new street over the top of that. Looking at the water main improvements from 7th further down south to South Street, near South Street. starts at the south end of town. That south section from south of the dealership up to South Street will be like an overlay, a mill and fill they call it, with some added asphalt on the side. From South Street up to 7th, it would be a reconstruction. The whole pavement would come up. There would be storm sewer improvements through there and a certain amount of sidewalk work done. The sidewalks are being covered by the DOT, but they're real picky about if they are steeper than ADA allows. So part of the design includes looking at it very closely to see if it meets the ADA criteria. There may be some newer sidewalk that actually doesn't meet the criteria, which we'll be going through with DOT on that. Originally, the DOT was going to do that design. It's so difficult for two different agencies to work passing information back and forth under one design. The DOT actually finally came to us and said, hey, can you just take this over? It just works better with one person doing it. So then the next phase is from 11th to 13th, reconstruction, and then further on overlay from 13th to the north end of town, north of Walmart. Very important with this design is staging and detours. And we looked at some different options for that, and it appears at this point that the Lemon Street is a good detour route. At least it will be for the summer. We don't prefer that when school's in session. We're looking for ways to get as much construction done on the street, on the main line, reconstruction in town during, so that the detour won't be during school. There are ways that we can do that, work on water main replacements, say between April and through May to June, see how much work we can get done by then. We actually, at the end of the preliminary design, we might talk about taking some of that out of the contract with DOT and trying to do it sooner to accelerate the schedule on that. It's a very detail-oriented project. We start with topographic survey, have meetings with DOT, meetings with city. This all fits hand in hand with the bill grant applications. We have to have the topographic survey to know where things are at, to see how they fit with the cost estimate and the construction plan. When we get done with the preliminary design, you'll have a set of plans it's about 50 sheets, I'm believing it will be. It'll show plan profiles for roadways, storm sewer, sanitary sewer, water main, intersections. It'll show the sidewalk that will be torn up and put back down. We plan to have 1 or 2 public meetings where we're inviting people to we'll give a presentation, kind of have an open house, just lay sheets out. People from businesses can look at what's going on at their block, and we'll come up with answers as far as how we handle that.
Sounds good. All right. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Lutz? Oh, sorry.
In the downtown, do the new sidewalks go up to the buildings, up to the thresholds?
You asked me the question, what was that RPZ file or whatever that was the other day? I got an update that was a 90 meg from Ken, and I looked at what he had there. It's my impression he showed some slopes that were exceeding the 2%. And when he shows that, he's indicating that that doesn't meet the criteria for ADA. I plan to have some meetings with DOT very early on, and we'll do the topo first, because then I'll know what's out of compliance, and then we'll discuss that with DOT and get from them what's acceptable to stay and what has to go. City will be involved in that as well. I'm just spearheading that effort.
Now, the contract amount is $154,942. Your breakout, your contract would be with the city, but your breakout is suggesting that ultimately, if the DOT agrees with it, they would be reimbursing the city of that $131,903.
I prepared a sheet that gives a breakout. The state was not going to reimburse for water main and sanitary design that went along with the street. They were going to say, hey, that's part of the city's. As well, the DOT was not funding all of storm sewer. So there's a fraction of storm sewer in the design that they would pay for. With the concept plan, it's a complicated formula, but they'll pay for a certain amount of inlets and a certain amount of pipe. I used the same ratio of what they were going to pay for the actual construction and applied that to the design portion, thinking that that would be some reasonable rationale. The rest of that is, so all of the sidewalk design would be reimbursable by DOT, and that is considerable. There's a lot of sidewalk involved in this. We were hoping that a lot of the curb could stay in, and even though some of the sidewalk may come out, we'll try and save as much of the curb as possible as well in the downtown area.
All right. Anything else, Brian? All right. If there are no questions for Mr. Lutz, entertain a motion. McNeil with the first and Spear with the second.
Anderson?
Yes.
Spear?
Yes.
Lieber?
Yes.
McNeil?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Lutz.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming down. So now we'll go by number 7 and head on to number 8, which is a resolution approving an internal loan from the city's Fund 160, the Economic Industrial Development, to Fund 125, a TIP special revenue for the Tipton Home Loan Program. Mr. Wagner?
Yeah. This was something that the council discussed as a possible goal. And it's something that I had written up the rules for quite a while ago. But the problem with it was finding a way to fund it, to capitalize the loan fund. And when we started talking about the housing rehab grant, we were looking at this as sort of the city's match or city participation to that application. So, in looking at this, the possibility is that if you look at, we've got at the 2 housing TIF districts that we have, and what they've created in TIF set-aside funds. And what that means is, if you have a housing TIF district, and if it isn't geared towards low to moderate income people, you have to take the percentage of low to moderate income people in your county and take that percentage out of the increment they would receive and set it aside. And then it has to be used or can be used for low to moderate income people anywhere in the city. So for example, if the low to moderate income level is 40%, then 40% of the increment that comes off those 2 housing developments can be captured and set aside for this fund. And so this projects that by the time those 2 TIF districts expire, we'll have around $76,000 either on hand or coming in, and then finally here. Well, what this is proposing to do is a $75,000 internal loan with this 76,000 coming in, that can pay it back. But what it's also suggesting is that the repaid amount also be allowed to stay in that fund until the council wants to call it due. So for example, ultimately, if the original 75 is available and the 75 that repays it is available because you haven't called it yet, the fund could have at some point up to 150,000. This is looking to do loans similar to the business loans that have had their rules changed, and we've seen more activity in that lending fund. So this would look again at a low interest rate such as the 0.5% that you've been doing on business loans. It would be up to 10,000, though you could waive that if you wanted to. It would be 5 years, so you could waive that if you wanted to. And it would be for improvements, not to refinance. We weren't really looking at it as a home, like a down payment fund. The money was meant, or at least the concept as I understood it was, to make improvements, hopefully taxable improvements to homes, siding, roof repair, major building systems, for example. The source of the funds that we're looking at is the Economic / Industrial Development Fund. It has around $625,000 in it. So if we did the internal loan initially of $75,000, we were thinking we could be in the area of 7 to 8 loans and see if it flies. And if it does fly, maybe the council would entertain the idea of putting more into the fund, again, as an internal loan. Again, as long as you want it there, and you can call it due whenever you want to, and it would then be repaid by money on hand or money that's revolving back. Let's see. Anyway, that's the bulk of it. You wanted to try to do something for homes. This is geared, since it's housing TIF, this 75,000 would be geared to low to moderate income people. And so I wanted to just mention along with that, the state had 2 ways of measuring low to moderate income. One was they publish that every year for every county. And so you can look up someone's income level and establish, are they low to moderate income? The other way to do it, and that's what this program is suggesting we do, is the state said if a home is of a price that a low to moderate income person could afford, that meant that benchmark. I've been using their method since the early 2000s, and I used it here for Cedar County. I wanted the state to verify for me what I had done, like they had done in the past. I had some old files from 2007 where they did it before. Well, the person I contacted at the state says the state doesn't do that any longer. They don't monitor housing TIF set-aside funds. Well, I used the method anyway that had been approved, and right now it would have homes valued at 185,000 buildings and lot would be qualified to use this fund.
This was assessed value.
Assessed value, yes. But that here, would cover the number of homes that you're looking to target. So, in a way, it's kind of an experiment, but
Would those have to be in the district? Or just that
no.
assessed value, anywhere in the
Right,
city?
yep,
Okay.
yep. TIF set-aside funds are available to anywhere in the city limits. So then if you couple that with, if they do further work, this draft calls for a $2,500 minimum match from the owner. So if you couple that, if they go beyond what the loan requires, maybe then their new improvements start to qualify for the urban revitalization tax exemption, so they could benefit again, possibly. So anyway, I'm hoping that the council will entertain this and give it a try and see if it works.
Any thoughts or questions?
I think it would do a lot of good with the limited amount of fund.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if, if this first 75,000 tells us a story about whether it's used, whether it's useful, popular, again, we could add to it.
All right, is there a motion concerning this resolution?
So moved.
Spear with the first and Lieber with the second.
Spear.
Yes.
Leeper. McNeil. Anderson.
Yes.
All right, number 9, which is a resolution consenting to the assignment of trustee agent agreements, escrow agent agreements, and/or paying agent and registrar and transfer agent agreements.
Our current outstanding obligations are owned by Bankers Trust, and we were notified last week that they are being acquired by UMB. And that'll be effective in mid-June. So what this resolution would do is that it will just authorize us to change from paying Bankers Trust to UMB. Everything will just be a switch.
All right, if there's no questions for Melissa, is there a motion? Anderson with the first and Spear with the second.
Leeper.
Yes.
McNeil.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Spear.
Yes.
All right, number 10, which is discussion and possible action for the proposed route of No One Fights Alone 5K to be held July 4th. Anybody? Mr.
Same as
Jellicoe?
last year.
Same as it was?
Talked to Lisa about it already.
All right. Is there any questions for Mr. Jellicoe? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Spear with the first and Leeper with the second.
McNeil. Anderson.
Yes.
Spear.
Yes.
Leeper.
Yes.
Thank you for your patience. All right, so now we're down to the reports, the mayor's report. I do have one thing, or a couple things. I would like to, I see John over there. I would like to thank him and the electrical department work for restoring power the other night
Yes.
after nasty animals got into something. Although, I thought it was kind of neat seeing the town dark. But thank you for all your hard work in getting it up and running again. Actually, that's all I have for the mayor's report. Council, committees, city managers.
I have 2 things. This afternoon, Brian and Steve and Melissa and I met, and we were talking about some options regarding sewer lining and manhole replacement or manhole rehab. And this is an area in the southern part of town. It's not in track 2, that northwest quadrant that we're looking to do a block grant application for. This is the area where we had talked about the 40 or so thousand. And actually, there's 40,000 in one fund and about 30 in another that could be put together. So, but there are some options on how to approach it. It could be looked at as a larger project. It could be looked at as smaller projects that sort of build over time. And what we concluded was the complexity of it made us think that we should request, if possible, a work session before your next council meeting at 5, if that works for you folks. Or we could talk about it in a little bit more detail.
So that's the 20th,
Right,
so May 20th at 5, work session.
yes, if that's okay.
Sounds like it is.
Okay by me.
All right.
The other item I wanted to talk about was, and I realize he's left, but the John Dornfeld situation. You know, as I mentioned to him the day we met, and there were like 6 from among our staff that met with him. I'm a little bit, well, I'm more than a little bit concerned about landlord-tenant situations where there's a vacancy and the unit isn't being used, and then it goes from garbage to other utilities, such as, well, the water was shut off, so, you know, is the same type of exemption going to be requested for that? And how long does the unit have to be vacant before an exemption like that begins? At our meeting, he had talked about, and, you know, I thought he might